That's not a takeaway.
It's not a give back.
Is don't look at your Fitbit stats because it makes you sad.
So the objective should never be to have that one book published. It should be to pursue writing.
Activate your energy.
Welcome to the Activated Authors Podcast, a show where we distill the core principles of what it takes to become a happy, healthy, and productive author, no matter what stage of the journey you're at. I'm your host, Daniel Willcocks. I'm an international best-selling author, as well as an author coach, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. But most importantly, I'm a lifelong student of all things productivity, psychology, and human behavior. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. What is up, Activators? And welcome back to another episode of the Activated Authors Podcast with myself, Daniel Willcocks, and...
the ever forgettable Samantha Frost.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've actually just left space for you to say your name.
Yeah, because you just couldn't, you didn't want to say it because that's how much of disdain you have for me. You forgot about me and Mastermind last night. Twice.
It's just smoother.
You said to everybody today in sprints, did I forget you, Sam? Because I do
I have
that.
a habit of forgetting Sam. But not on the podcast.
unless you use the adjective immemorable.
Immemorable, of course. And I really like the work that you've done with printing off and pinning off another logo onto your top this week. So
thank you. Yeah,
appreciate the efforts. Yeah,
that's all right. No worries.
The coffee stains managed to come out all right.
Yes, thank God. Yeah. Yep.
Ready to go. For people on the YouTube, we are presenting the actor. Mine is so. I really need a new t-shirt. This is getting quite tatty now.
Yeah, and I'm just apparently presenting my tits, so I shall lower them now.
I'm going to be watching YouTube to see if that spikes, because if it does, we have a problem, audience. Can you believe it's been nearly a year and a half of Activated Authors? Not so much the launching, but in the sense of me and you talking about it. Because this week I went back and because I've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes on some of the Activated Authors stuff. And I was looking at the original kind of pitch and business plan that I put together. And yeah, it's been nearly a year and a half now. No, right then, it hasn't. I'm wrong. Yeah, it was around originally the first conception was I think March time 2021. And then all of the wheels started turning around May and into June.
Jesus.
Yeah.
No wonder I look tired. That's crazy.
Yeah. And exciting as well. Like I say, I've gone through. I went back and looked through all the old pitch and business things, just that I did for myself more than anything. But also because obviously we had the people from what was boot camp into the Willcocks writers, and I was trying to work out a way to kind of explain to people what my ideas and what my plans are and what this was going to be. Because obviously, we want people to transfer over and get on board and know what the plan is. I put it all together, and it's really kind of interesting going back and looking at it all, because we're doing a lot of it, and it's following the brief. There's things that we're expanding on that are on that list that are quite exciting to jump into. So yeah, a year and a half.
That's really cool. Jesus, that's longer than most of my relationships.
Well, there you go. Read into that.
Oh yeah, no, I just get bored.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, it's absolutely nuts. But how are you? What have you been working on this week?
Just more poetry stuff.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I was last week. Had I finished it
right here recording this podcast?
Yeah, well, that's true. I don't remember if I'd finished it last week, but I've finished it basically. And the edits. I'm going through some kind of half finished poems. So the main le chunk is done. So I'm just kind of going through half finished ones and just kind of seeing if there is anything that I want to add. So there's a couple of the things that have happened recently that I feel the need to pen. So we'll see. I don't know whether they'll be in this book or if that's the start of a new book. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm just doing that. I've got my official handover deadline for the proofreader is the 5th of December. So I'm just kind of tying up that and then like setting up for recording the audio and stuff. So yes, it's weird because I feel like I've done nothing. But then I look at my folder and I'm like, oh no, yeah, that's a shit ton of poems that I've edited and written in the first place. Yeah, that's really where like my main focus is at the moment, much to everything else I want to do chagrin. There we go.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of on that vein, like this week has been, I don't know what the word for it is, like it has been rewarding, I guess is the best word for it, because as people who listen to the show know, like I had a couple of weeks of burnout. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, and I ended up sitting down for what was meant to be a 15-minute chat with my business coach on Friday and turned into nearly 2 hours of his time. God bless his soul. And there seems to be moments in which, and I'm not a woo-woo kind of guy, but there are definitely moments in which the universe kind of turns itself over and presents things at the right time. Because I have a lot of stuff that I can't really talk about too publicly until they launch.
Chlamydia.
Yeah, and that, but you know, medications in progress. So, but like, yeah, I was just incredibly overwhelmed, basically. Like, you know, it's no secret that it's no secret that I do a lot, like, you know, that my kind of attention goes here, there, and everywhere. And just a really rewarding chat with my business coach has kind of refocused some of the stuff that I'm working on and really put me in a good position to see ways to pull things together, to streamline, to narrow, and really double down on stuff that I've kind of found it difficult to commit to because of some of the other things that I've been doing. Just to keep it somewhat, you know, explicit.
Legally acceptable.
yeah. But then that kind of then revolved into some very, very difficult conversations that I've had this week with people that I'm very, very happy that I've taken. And like to toot my own horn for like 5 seconds.
Please.
Like I've had a moment of realizing just how far I've come and, you know, where I'm sitting and the opportunities that I have available to me and how they wouldn't have been, you know, the case a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And so, yeah, I think that coupled with the fact that it's now been 2 weeks that I've regularly been going to the gym and making that somewhat of a routine has really kind of helped narrow my focus. And I talk a lot about why you should go narrow and deep on something and the rewards of that rather than wide and shallow on 1,000 different things. And the most annoying part is, and I know this from, you know, being a coach and speaking to authors, because I say it to people all the time, but like when you're a coach who has a coach and then your coach basically goes, what would you tell your clients? And you suddenly go, oh yeah, like I've spoken to you about this week. It's comparatively the same as like those moments when you're in a bad relationship and you see other people in bad relationships and you're like, well, you know, what would you tell your friend if they were in your situation? And your answer is always, yeah, but this is different. It's not different. It is not different. No. Like you tell yourself a story because it's easier to stay and suffer than it is to make that short, hard decision to, you know, go on and do other things. And it's, you know, the same with my business and has been. And so, yeah, like I'm feeling good at where it's at. I've given myself like a real big bounty of permission to step back from a couple of things for now. And, you know, we'll see where this is in 6 months again. But for now, I'm in a good place. So yeah, there are projects moving ahead. There are things that I'm working on. At the minute, I'm kind of hitting a load of things that have been on my backlist for a long time that are going to serve the whole in the long run and doing lots of that. And then, of course, you know, we've got our writing camp happening at the minute for people who are participating in NaNoWriMo. So we are at a point in which 3 people have, and this is jumping into our wins from the community for this week, but 3 people have already crossed the 50,000 word finish line. 2 of those did it on day 13. Was it both of them?
One did it on 13.
Yeah, Emmy, there was Ara, we've had Julie cross the finish line, and then tonight promises to see Rob cross the finish line. So people are starting to trickle through with that 50,000 words, you know, almost 2 weeks.
Although we have been having to bitch slap some people.
Oh, that's part of the course.
Gently.
Yeah. But it is like I think one of the most fruitful things that I put together for myself for Nano was the roadmap of the ups and downs.
Yeah.
Because like I really do believe in it, and I really do, you know, when you say to people, take advantage of that starter energy, fucking do, because it is day 3, it is day 4 that people start to go like, nah, and they step back. And the best thing that I can do to help people, and I've had a few calls and things with different authors this week to just try and buoy them along. It's just really to get them slightly ahead, because once you get to the point where you're halfway and you're kind of around that halfway mark in your word count, even if like, you know, by day 15 you're on 22,000 words, you're just under halfway at the halfway mark, and that part of you goes in to go like, holy shit, I can do this. And that's when people kind of just run to the finish line, and I love that part. And you know, we've seen that with, I won't name names, but we've seen that with a few people at the minute who are close to handing in the towel, and then are now just coursing ahead, and it's really rewarding to see.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it was on Tuesday, someone kind of realized that they were going to hit it, that they were capable of doing it, and this person was very like not feeling that way at the beginning, and I smiled because I was like, this is the exact thing that I was talking about before, the people that are like, I'll do it but I'm not gonna do it. And then it's I can do it, and I just smiled because I was like,
you can see belief, which is a weird thing to say, but you absolutely can. Like you can like, and you can account for this because I won't name names, but before these writing camps kick off, I will often say to you who I think will 100% do it, and who is capable of doing it but needs to find that belief. And 9 times out of 10, probably 99% of the time, like I am bang on the money, because again, you can see it.
Yes, you can.
And you can see it in how people speak about it, what their face looks like, how they're approaching it. Like there's one person that I'm really kind of turning the heat up behind them at the minute, because they can absolutely do it. But it's a struggle for them at the minute. And they absolutely have it in them. But it's just giving people that kind of kick up the backside to go, then go do it. Like, and half of the time it's really envisioning that finish line. And I talk a lot about, you know, your why, and we've done an episode on why, and I've done episodes on why before, because it is so fundamentally important to all of this. But like in those conversations, the question always comes back to like, why are you doing this? Because if you're choosing to do this hard thing and you haven't really got like a real motivation, a real end goal with this, whether that's just proving it to yourself to do a hard thing, whether that's to get a book published, whatever it is, like then it is going to be a struggle. And one of the questions I asked someone a few days ago was, how would you feel if you didn't do it? If you knew that you got to the 1st of December and you hadn't tried, and you were 30 days ahead, not having done the thing that you keep promising yourself you're going to do. Like, it's not just imagining the highs, it's imagining the lows as well, because like speaking from my own experience, and speaking from my own experience, like, and you know, probably everyone else's as well, life goes fast. And before you know it, a year's passed, 2 years passed, and you've still not done the thing that you said you're going to do. And then you're like, well, the only person that can do this is me. So am I going to do it or not?
Yeah. And the truth is,
life and death.
A lot of the time as well, and I don't mean this in like a horrible way, but the only person that really truly gives a shit if you do it or not is you. Like, you'll have people cheer you on, you'll have people console you, but like then they just get on with their lives because it's not their life, it's not the thing that they said they were going to do. So some kicks up the asses all around, but yeah, very 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 proud of how everyone's doing so far. It's all looking damn good. So what is your one takeaway from this week? Well, before I go into this, I would just quickly like to say, if you are watching on YouTube, I apologize because I've got fluffy hair because it's still damp from the bath, and I'm real tired because I have not been sleeping. I told Dan this actually. I looked on my my Fitbit stats, if you will, because I got it for myself for my birthday, and I looked at all my sleep, and I thought it was 5, but it was actually 4. Since the 28th of March, arguably the most important day of the year, up until now, I have on 4 nights hit 8 hours or more sleep. That's it.
For people unfamiliar with the recommended daily sleep allowance, as it were, 8 hours.
Yeah. So in 7.5 months, I've had 4 nights where I have slept the amount I'm supposed to. So that answers the question why I'm exhausted all the time. My takeaway for this week is don't look at your Fitbit stats because it makes you sad. No. It's that I am, how to word it? This is why I should write it down, because it's always better when I write it down, but I am in a good place. That's kind of, she says, like falling asleep. Like, I'm in a good place, and life will try you, as it is constantly
Oh boy, will
at
it?
the moment. But my relationship with me at the minute is the best it's been ever. I am aware that there are lots of things in my life that I would like to be different, but that doesn't affect who I am at my, like, just at my base, at my core. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, there's been some real lows this year. It's been a really, really, like, crucible year. And you know, it looks like it's going to continue to be so. But I think as long as I can put my head on the pillow at the end of the night and know that I'm okay with me because I've done the things that hold true to my morality, to my beliefs, then I think I can continue saying that, like, I'm in a good place. It doesn't mean that, like, you know, I'm put a deposit down for a house, or that, like, my kid's getting, like, A stars and loving everything about his life, or that, like, all of my relationships are fantastic. Far from most of that. But yeah, just to be able to, like, meet my gaze in the mirror and be like, you're doing it, just keep doing it.
It's massive.
Yeah. That's what my therapist said.
But it's true, like, at the end of the day, you've already mentioned that even in Nana, the only person that really cares whether or not you've done it is yourself. Like, you know, I, even within the camp itself, obviously I want people to succeed, I want to push people to get there, but it's not me that's going to be affected by it if they don't hit it. In a way it is, but more so then.
Yeah,
but, like,
we can cherry pick the stats for next year, it's fine.
Yeah. But, like, I've had that conversation with people before where it's like the thing that matters most in life is how you feel about yourself in a darkened room. Because that's what you're going to have. That's the most consistent thing that you'll have in your life is yourself, where you are in your head. How do you be kind to that person and accept that person and be happy with that person?
Yeah. It's not always easy.
No.
But yeah, you just, I think when you can just kind of, even if you don't fully, because, you know, there's always the question, like, who am I? And I've had that for most of my life, but I think the answer is ever changing. But if you can, like, find those few things that are solid in you, so, like, for example,
Gallstones,
yeah, toothstones, just kind of, for me, it's my morals, it's my
compass.
I know what I think is okay, and I know what I think is not. And, like, when all else fails, that becomes my North Star. So I think just holding on to something that you know is you and building from there.
Yeah. Love that.
How about you? What's your one key takeaway from this week? And do not say food.
Challenge accepted.
I knew that'd stump you.
I got a book sent from Amazon. That was nice.
That's not a takeaway.
But it's not a give back. Kablam. My key takeaway, I kind of already mentioned it, is I don't think there's any coincidence that the last 2 weeks I've been consistent with a gym routine and eating better, and my just general day-to-day mental health has massively taken a tick upwards. It's so paradoxical that we sometimes just slip into these periods of lower than baseline, and when you get into those periods, like, you know, all the things that will make you feel better, but you don't do them. And, you know, it's not like I wasn't going for walks, it's not like I wasn't like doing bits and pieces, but I've started going back into weight training. Just not like, I always used to attach an end goal to it, like there was always a competition or like a run or something coming up. And honestly, like, I listened to a podcast. What podcast was it? It was School of Greatness, Lewis Howes, and it was we'll try and put it in the show notes, but it was from the last few weeks about changing your relationship with food and exercise and things. And the big takeaway from that for me was oftentimes many of us, and you know, this is painting with a broad stroke, many of us will diet almost as a form of punishment. You know, we restrict the foods that we like because oftentimes they're not the healthiest. And we hold on to that kind of discomfort, that pain, to almost feel like we know we're doing a good job, and to punish ourselves for letting us get to the point where we've been eating unhealthily enough, and that's had a bad effect on our bodies.
Sweat is weakness leaving the body.
Exactly. And yeah, similarly to exercise, like I've suffered from it before, where I've, like, you know, seen myself put on a few pounds, go to the gym, and I've just smashed it really hard and hurt myself, and feel like I'm making progress. And like, it was just a reminder in that episode that you know, rather than looking at things as a fix and as a way to hurt yourself for things that you might not be entirely proud of, like, view the fact that by doing these healthy habits, it's a good thing. Like, you're doing it because you want to feel good, and you're doing it because, like, in order to have a better life, like, this stuff will make you feel better. So for me, like, the last, and again, like, it's early into the journey, I'm aware, but the last 2 weeks, it's just been a case of I've gone to the gym, I have taken to the routine that I'm on, and I've listened to like good music, I've listened to podcasts, and I almost kind of like treat it as a bit of like just a me therapy session, just to do the thing. And the other thing as well that I'm doing is I'm not overloading and really trying to push to my limit, like, especially because I'm early on in this again. I'm allowing my body to get used to the feel of weight and just to adjust to some of the things that I'm doing. So you know, over time I'll increase things and get stronger in things, but like, the fact is I'm now doing twice a week exercise that I wasn't doing before. And so that is already a huge improvement in terms of physical health, mental health, like all of it. So yeah, that's my takeaway, is just a reminder that, like, although these things are universally pushed to us, and you know, we can get sick sometimes of hearing about like the importance of, sorry Sam, sleep, food, exercise, relationships, all that kind of stuff, like, they really do have a big impact on our day to day.
Yes, I can attest.
It's almost like I was writing a book about this at one point.
I can attest that, like, not sleeping will have a big impact on your day to day. It sucks.
Yeah. And now I guess into the question. Sam, hit it.
I am assuming that the weekly win, like you said, we were referencing the nano winners. That's our wins for this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So this week's question is, I believe, why is genre so gosh darn important?
Why is genre important? I'm so used to asking the questions.
I asked you.
I know.
You don't get to just repeat the question at me and get me to ask and answer the question.
I don't just get to repeat the question at you.
You're the worst.
So the context for this question comes from the fact that, so I've been coaching for 2.5 years, I think it is now. And you know, before that, I've been a writer for like 7 years. I've been in this industry. I've worked around writers. I've listened to other writers, how like their process is. Like, I'm a little bit obsessed with trying to understand how writers work. because everyone is so different. And again, without naming names, I had a conversation with one of our activated authors yesterday, and just I love those conversations because it really lets me like dig into understanding people's processes, and just there's such a trigger word, take a drink, spectrum of different ways to write and how different goals and all that kind of beautiful stuff. And genre is something I've come back to again and again, and it's something that the more it comes around, just the more fundamental it seems to be to help writers write their fucking book. So just to touch on how I kind of view writing, the writing process, particularly for people that might be new to the podcast, I will argue fairly confidently that when someone turns a hand to writing a book and goes, all right, I'm gonna give this a go. I've never written a book. I'm gonna give it a go, see if I can get to the end, go for it. We already know that's gonna be a learning book. We already know that there's like a lot of pieces that have to move along the way. You have to learn about your own writing routine, your own habits. You have to like,
your own mental health.
Exactly. You have to learn about all the different elements of what it is to write a story. And I would argue 9 times out of 10 that first book is going to be what I call a heart book. And a heart book is not a genre book. What a heart book is it's a testament to yourself that you can finish a book. But at the same time, what it also has is a legacy of potentially 5, 10, 20, 30 years of whatever that desire is inside you that's been going, okay, I want to write a book. I need to write a book. I'm going to do it this year. Next year, I'll do it this year. Okay, it's been long enough now. It's been 10 years. I'm going to write this year. And you eventually get to the point where you sit down and you write this book. And because this story has been inside you for so long, there isn't really any attention paid to marketability, commerciability, all that kind of stuff. And rightly so, in my opinion, because like you have to know that you can write a book before you then write the book, in my opinion. And this is speaking from someone who, I wrote, I did write a novella that I just pushed out, but that was more of a case of I just wanted to experiment. I wasn't looking for any of that. My first novel that I wrote was 83,000 words, I believe it was. And I stumbled through it. I did 2 drafts. I looked at it, and I would argue it is thriller mixed with historical, mixed with magical realism, mixed with a touch of horror. Like it's not a book that I can sell very effectively. And so what ends up happening, and you've seen this yourself with people, and like I don't think this is any kind of like hidden secrets. A lot of people write their first book, stumble into this industry, into this sphere, and then go, okay, how do I sell this book? And very quickly they learn that they're met with a wall of genre. Which is why this is so important. Because you go.
I was just going to say, and not just not just genre, but like, genres within genres, subgenres, niche genres. Like, especially when you're talking to someone that's been doing this for a while, they're like, okay, so you're writing horror. Cool. Is it like paranormal horror? Is it like slasher horror? Is it like punk splat horror? Is it like, it's scary.
And oftentimes, not to pick on anyone, but like when people say they've written horror, it's normally fantasy with elements of horror. Which is I've got a real chip on my shoulder, but that's not what this episode's about.
Let's talk about the Amazon child.
Don't. No. I'm staring at the platform now, going, "Don't you stand on it."
Literally, this is my revenge poke of the bear.
Okay, fair. I'll take it. But so you're then met with this wall of genre because you've written a book, but you've not paid attention to the next step. And again, rightly so, because writing a book is heavy, it's hard, it's huge, and you have to learn the elements of, your process of character building, world building, plot, all the kind of fundamentals that go into story. So the reason the genre is so important is because by knowing your genre, by being able to push a book into a genre, you're then able to find the readers that will read your book and will appreciate your book. And I'm really trying to like step back to some of the fundamentals here before I dive into more of the specifics, but like, why is that important? Because you can put a book out, and I've done this myself, in which I've written a horror book that I thought was an apocalyptic book, and I've tried to sell that to post-apocalyptic readers, and they've not enjoyed it, or some have, but it hasn't quite hit where it should. And what would be a typical response from someone is, oh, my book is crap, it's not selling, no one likes it, I'm not a writer. The reality of that situation is those aren't the people for that book. So I repositioned that book, put it into horror. People like it.
Well,
So yeah. So this is kind of where genre comes in. So Sam, if I was to say like define genre just broadly, how would you define genre?
I would define genre as the general flavor and world of which your book is set. So, you know, is it set in a colorful world where everything ends happily ever after? There's some ups and downs along the way, but everybody knows that this is going to be okay. Romance, right? Is it like a kind of moody noir kind of feel where like there's twists and turns and you never know like what's going on or anything like that? Like thriller, like, and then horror. Does everybody die, Dave? Yes, cool. It's probably horror.
Most of the time, yeah.
Are there elves? It's probably fantasy. But it's just for me, it's just like a category, like you go into any shop for anything, like say if you're like, oh, I really fancy some fruit, cool, like are you after like berries? Do you want like vine fruit? Are you looking for fruit from a tree? like you know, like do you want to be able to eat the entire fruit, or do you like peeling skin or spitting out endless seeds, pomegranates, what the fuck? Anyway, it is literally just, it's a category so that when the shopper comes in, they know what they want, and they're like, okay, cool. And they're, you know, say if they want a banana, they're not going to be happy spitting out pomegranate seeds. It doesn't peel as easily, and you can't just eat it.
There you go. Much like most books.
I'm so good at metaphors and analogies.
But yeah. But no, you hit on two very, very key parts of that. Number one, categories. So the most why genre is important is because if you were to walk into a bookstore, where would you place your book so that the readers who have walked into that shop knowing what they want will be able to find it in its most simplest form? That's what we're doing. Whether it's digital, whether it's physical, that's the whole point of a genre. All it is a category, it's a label, so that readers know what kind of stuff that they'll like, and if they pick up a book, they're more likely to like it than something that's mislabeled. And so that's what we do with genre. So, you know, you've kind of touched on a few of them already, but like some of the top main genres, you've got like thriller, you've got romance, you've got fantasy, you've got horror, you've got sci-fi, you've got, there was another one.
That was incredible.
Totally slipped. But yeah, so just as like broad top shelf genres, when you walk into a shop, that's what you find. I mean, also including obviously like non-fiction, and you go into like cookery and art and all that kind of stuff. But like those are your kind of top shelf genres. And the reason why, because you probably tell I've been doing a lot of deep diving in on this lately, one of the most powerful parts of knowing what your genre is before you begin to write, and we'll circle back to that, is knowing your genre can shortcut 1,000 decisions on how to write your book. When you write your heart book, and speaking from my experience again, like there are so many hard decisions to make along the way. Like, is it first person? Is it third person? Am I going to do this in past tense or present tense? Like, how many characters I'm going to have? Where's it going to be set? All of that stuff can be given to you when you know your genre. Because by averages, most genres, and we'll kind of touch on subgenres in a minute, but most genres have some kind of formula that you can write your story in. So if I were to say to you, Sam, tell me what an epic fantasy book looks like.
Okay, so epic fantasy books, you would usually find them in third person. They're normally written that way, like in the past tense, as if it has happened. And it would normally be with a more like is it omniscient, so like head hopping, because it normally starts like with a very narrow focus and then blows out.
So you can explore the world.
Exactly. So you explore the world, you explore the different parties, and by doing that, then you can explore all of the different worlds, cultures, creatures, all of that. There's a lot of lore involved, and you usually find like a very kind of like a 3-act structure. One could argue 3-act structure is just story in general, but like I mean, Lord of the Rings, look at that, is literally, he literally wrote it in 3. It's one book, but he wrote it in 3 sections.
He was forced to split it, wasn't he, because of his publisher?
Yeah.
His publisher went, the book's way too long, we're going to do 3.
Yeah. Where's the Hobbit milk, Jacob? But yeah, so like if you look at that, like we start very kind of insular in Hobbiton. You've got Frodo, you've got Sam, and obviously there's Bilbo there as well. And it's very much like this is the normal world. They often follow like a hero's journey, or the heroine's journey as well is becoming a lot more popular in high or epic fantasy. You will see magical creatures. You must see magical creatures. You must see like different races and different worlds. That's just what people expect. They are usually, like I say, they're set in the past, not just in the tense, but like in some kind of like Middle Earth, like, you know, they've got swords and horses and that kind of thing.
Very medieval feel.
Yeah, basically. Like it's very like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like it's pre-industrial most of the time, and a lot of the time the threat is something kind of industrial or something that will interfere that. But we always start very rural with like, you know, the people, and then most of the time, and then it kind of like blows out. That is what people expect. They expect for it to take a long time to read. They expect to have to like reread things and stuff, and not only do they expect it, they want it. Because we was talking about this last night, like there's no such thing really as a casual epic or high fantasy reader, because there's so much work that goes into it and you're so invested that like you will read tomes about like the world and the things, because you know that's what you want, as opposed to like, for example, horror, Dan, which is you give us some horror.
Hold on, before we jump to that, jump into that, dig a little bit further. So obviously you've got done a lot in terms of like the world building and how all that kind of feels. If I were to say to you, are the chapters long or short?
Long.
Are the books long or short?
Oh, long.
Are the casts big or small?
Big.
These decisions have been made by the genre already. So it's rare that you're ever going to jump into an epic fantasy and see like 3 people take on the world. And rarely anyone else. So knowing all of that, as you say, like you've already extracted a crap ton of information to answer a load of questions of how do I write this book. Horror, well, again, kind of like depends on your subgenres, but generally there is a very omnipresent feel of threat. You never quite feel safe reading a horror. There's often very gloomy, dark scenes, although sometimes they can use light scenes to contrast those and really, you know, dig the heels in and make them sing. Typically it kind of goes back and forth, but typically a lot of third person. There's a lot of male protagonists, although that is changing somewhat in the genre, which is very, very nice to see. Chapter lengths tend to be sort of around medium-ish length. I'd say anything from 2,000 to 4,000 words. The prose isn't too dense depending on who you read. So like in fantasy, as you say, you have to reread some stuff, like it's very dense. It's often third person. What's the word? Forgotten the opposite of omniscient now. Third person limited. No, third person limited. So often like it's in third person, someone's telling that story, but it's kind of still within that character's head. There's lots you can extract from that. Like again, like there's lots of novellas you can write in horror if you want to go down that route, but novels tend to be anywhere from sort of maybe 40 to 70,000 words, depending on sort of
and do they have happy endings?
No, rarely. No, there's always happy endings are relative and tend to come more at the expense of the character. So, you know, the evil can be defeated, but it leaves a lasting scar. Tends to be horror. Or somewhere everything is just shit. And then again, like jumping over into a third genre, if you look at thrillers,
which you could argue is a very close, like a lot of people would like say that's like a close relative of horror, because there's a lot of like suspense.
It's suspense, which is the linking feature there.
Like the chapters so short. like turn the page. You expect with thrillers to have some kind of, again, depending on like subgenres and things, like either there has to be like a character that is like an investigator. Now they don't have to be legally an investigator, so not like a police officer or something like that, but the main like character that you follow, which is usually the character. Like you can often find thrillers in first person, because it's like a lot more direct, it's a lot more quick, you're there, it's fast. They're on a journey of finding out what the fuck is going on. So whether that is a police officer or a detective, or it's like a wronged husband, or it's a woman in threat, or a PI or whatever, you're following their story and you're discovering the things as they are discovering them. So they're very often present tense in that person's head, and like you're supposed to feel the shock as they feel the shock. Like you expect twists and turns, and the end you expect a resolution.
Yes,
it doesn't have to be a happy ending, but you expect to like find out what the fuck has been going on. Most people would expect to be shocked by that. Like if you're reading a thriller, like it's not really a great thriller if at the end it's like, it was Bob. Oh, Bob, the person that we saw in the very first scene that was like, I done it, holding
just wiping his knife.
yeah, just wiping his wife off his knife. I done it.
Yeah,
it was Bob. Oh, fucking hell, that's like 300 pages I'm never getting back.
Yeah. There's just very, very tangentially on that point, there's a fantastic sketch from David Mitchell and Robert Webb on I think it's that Mitchell and Webb look, which is, I believe they call him like the passport or the photograph killer or something, and it's literally a killer who's standing there just like presenting fingerprints and stuff, and they're like, oh, I am stumped, and he's literally like, oh, let's have a look at what we've got. Well, we've got his photo, we've got his driver's ID, we've got his blood type, but we can't catch him. And it's fantastic.
Selfie with the corpse.
Comedy playing on the inversion of tropes.
Yes.
There you go. But yeah, like the amount of information from those three genres just extracted that, if you're sat down and going like, I want to write a story, and you're not thinking thriller, but you're like, I want to write some kind of mystery story, like you're already funneling yourself down that track.
Yeah.
And so if we dig a touch deeper into subgenres, and then again kind of really drill into, I think the point is being made of why this is important, but then sort of look at some more applications. But like, so we've mentioned obviously epic fantasy and the tropes that come from that. Epic fantasy is a subgenre of fantasy. So broadly, as you say, like fantasy, there's magic, there's creatures, there's all that kind of good stuff. It's all very, very fictional, rarely happens in the modern world, unless you're writing in urban fantasy.
Or like magic realism, which is arguably kind of urban fantasy, but I think like you could argue Gaiman is magical realism. It's a little bit more elevated.
So your overarching genre, fantasy, within that there are going to be a ton of niches, a ton of sub niches, like all that kind of stuff. So
and readers don't generally transfer. That's the thing. If
you've got someone reading urban fantasy, it's very unlikely or not very unlikely, but quite unlikely that they're going to jump into like epic fantasy. And because and speaking from someone that's written across like horror and then apocalyptic, which I had zombies in, they were apocalyptic fans. Like if I wrote a horror with zombies, they probably wouldn't like the apocalyptic that I wrote with zombies, which is bizarre, but it is what it is, and it kind of makes sense.
Tropes, and it's the subgenres.
And we'll do an episode on tropes, because I think that's huge. But the thing that I say a lot to people, which I don't think really makes sense until you kind of like experience some of this, is readers want the same but different. And ask anyone that you see who you're like, oh, what do you read? It's like, I read romance, and you dig into it deeper. I'm using my mum as an example here, but like Danielle Still, like she will gobble up a Danielle Still book, and arguably on the surface level they're all the same story, but they're not, because they've got different characters and whatnot, but like they're the same story. So readers, a lot of the time, they want the comfort of knowing what to expect, in the sense of the narrative point of view, the tense, the world building, the characters, the general ebb and flow of that story, but they want the difference of feeling like they're connecting with slightly different characters and going on a slightly different journey. So it's almost like this safety net of reading a story, because again, like if you were to read Lee Child and then to read Margaret Atwood,
very different.
they're both stories, and like we won't in this episode, but we can go into like how the stories, as you mentioned before, like Acts 1, 2, and 3, they're the same, but they're absolutely not when you read them.
No,
because of how they're presenting all these kind of specifics. So,
Reacher and Off-Road are slightly.
Oh different. yeah. It's just what pops in my head. But circling that background, so when you write that first book, oftentimes, as I say, is the heart book. Yes. You write it, you get to the end, and then you suddenly hit this point of struggling to go like, how the fuck do I market this? And you have two options, really. First option is look at genre.
Okay.
See what it's closest to, see what you like, because you've written a story that you're very attached to. Do you want to mold this and squeeze this into a package that then will fit to a reader? That's a question for you to answer, not you, royal you. Do you want to do that? Because, you know, some don't. I didn't. As I say, like that first book lives in a drawer because it served its purpose. It taught me that I could write a book. Or the alternative is, as I say, put it down. Start again, this time with the knowledge that you've learned from that first book, to make something more commercial, something a bit more easier to sell to agents, to publishers, to the readers if you choose to self-publish, like no matter which route you go down. And I think that's one of like probably the toughest lessons to learn as a writer, and I think that's something that I see people struggling with a lot, because as I say, like that first book can be 10, 20, 30 years of want, and you get to the end, you're like, oh my god, I finally wrote a book, I finally did it.
Now what?
Oh shit.
And I think as well, like it's worth noting that, like you say, when most people sit down to write the book, their heart book, no one's thinking about selling it. Like they're thinking about like the romance of the fact that they're writing a fucking novel. They're thinking about the next time they see like Auntie Jane, they can be like, fuck you, Auntie Jane, I'm writing that book that you ask me about every Christmas. Like, yeah, I'm writing it. I am a writer. Like,
how's the novel going, Brian?
Yeah. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Oh, it's going to be
great. Like, you know, and just being able to like say that makes you like feel a bit better about yourself, a bit, all of the rest of it. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, cool. I've written the book. Do what? Okay, I don't know what to do now. And like, you know, once you get past edits and things, should you choose to do all of that, then yeah, it is that thing of like, okay, so do I want other people to care about this, or am I happy putting this in the drawer? And I think as well, like often, like you said, your first one is like a mix of like genres and things. People, you know, you write what you know, and I don't necessarily mean the story, I mean the tropes that you use, the things like if you are, you know, someone that like devours romance and high fantasy, you'll find that like you've merged them in your writing. And yeah, so I think it is just a case of, like you say, you get to the end and you make that decision, and you absolutely can like squish it, squash it, and put it into a shape that is honestly digestible to other people. Or you can be like, you know, put it in a frame, big frame, and move on. And also just something that I'd like to touch on is that, because I had this for a long time when I was first writing, like this idea of it being commercial and like making sure that, you know, you can sell it and all that kind of stuff. If you are wanting to make money in any, like whether it's like you want an extra tenner a month, or you want to be like the world's #1 bestseller, or anything in between, like an audience of readers is essential for that goal. And it's not about selling out. It's not about like dulling your creativity. It's about saying, okay, I want to serve these people, and this is the story that I've got, and this story is awesome and amazing, and I love it, and I think it fits here, possibly there. It's about like just narrowing down to the point of, okay, what do I want this story, like where does it go on the shelf? What do I want it to say? And once like you know that's genre. It's not about having to write like carbon copies of every other thing. And when Dan says the same but different, like the Bible and Star Wars, you could argue, are the same but different. Very fucking different. But the same but different. It's not, you know, you don't have to literally copy and paste the same book and just change the names. It doesn't just have to be, no, this one owns a perfume shop, not a bath bomb shop. Like it can be that, because there are books like that and readers will devour them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to impact, nor should it impact on your creativity or the story that you want to tell. It's just about making sure that it's clean and it works, and that when readers get it, the right readers get it, that they like love it. I think is the best.
And in marketing we call that positioning. It's just where, and it's that same principle. You've got a product, where are you going to put it so that the right people find it and it serves in the right way? And as you say, I don't want it to come across disenchanting, because again, like, writing a book is a lot of work. And there are people that have made success from their first book. The thing that I try and get across to people when they jump into this biz is that I try to teach and show the path in which you have the greatest success statistically on how to make it as an author. Because a lot of people, you know, you write a book and you're not just happy with that. You want to be an author, you want to be a published author and put your book out there. And there are options left, right, and center to do that. The common denominator among all of them, if you're self-publishing, we've spoken about this before, like again and again, like, you're going to need a backlist. So you're not just writing this first book, you're writing another book and another book and another book, which means you have a chance every time. I see Chase just poking his head out, you do, mate. But you have opportunity after opportunity to put a book out and to grow that backlist and to learn and to get better as a writer. Like, that one book isn't a determiner of whether or not you're good. And similarly to if you're pursuing agents or traditional publishing, like I use Josh Malerman's example from when we chatted on like Great Writer Share eons ago, it seems. He had like 30 books written before he pitched and got Bird Box published and then turned into a movie and all that kind of stuff. Like, he wrote books because he loved them, and by the time that he had like 30 books, he was like, well, I might pitch a few of these. And you know what's interesting about that? Your odds increase when you got quite a few books. Like, because an agent or a publisher might suddenly go like, we like you, but this book isn't quite for us. What else have you got? So the objective should never be to have that one book published. It should be to pursue writing.
Well, it's the same as like if you make art, as in like painting. One of the first things you have to realize is, what kind of paintings do you do? Because there's a big difference.
Bad ones.
Like Picasso and Monet.
Yes.
You know, between, I'm trying to think of, hang on, let's see if I can make myself look smart here. Between Van Gogh and
Tchaikovsky.
That's a composer. Nice try though.
I thought I'd buy you some time.
Thank you. The
Don't feel like you used
Dali,
it.
thank you. God, I was like the mustache clock guy.
Yes.
Like, there's huge differences and the audiences are different. But like, you don't pick up a pencil or a paintbrush and do one thing and be like, cool, dream achieved, I'm done. Or be like, oh, that's shit, I guess I can't do this.
Yes.
You don't like bake a cake for the first time, or make bread. It's probably a better example because cakes are relatively easy. Bread's a tricky mistress. And be like, oh, I'm a shit baker. No, you go again. Like, yeah, it's quicker to make bread than write a book, arguably. But don't judge the results of your first loaf as like what it's always going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So bring it around in conclusion. For a reader, a genre is the category of that book that makes it easier for a reader to find books that they're going to love. Like, it's the very reason when I walk into Waterstones, I go straight to the horror shelf. Like, there might be some awesome reads that have some dark themes in other bookshelves, but I go to horror because that's where I know as a reader that I'm more likely to find a book that I'm going to like. For an author, it's a sequence of suggestions and guidelines on how to write a successful book within that genre. Because that's not to say that, you know, there aren't thriller books that are in third person, or there aren't fantasy books that are in first person, but they're definitely the exception, not the rule.
And it's often people that know the rules that can break them.
100%. Like, you have to, if you're a musician, and this is one of the really weird things that I've come across between like in differences of art, but like, if you're a musician, the first thing that you do is learn to play note by note. and then you play other people's songs and learn how to play their songs before you even think of composing.
Oh God, yeah.
Because, and I won't go too deep into this, but because like educational systems, obviously writing's pretty critical to a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
There's just this assumption that because you've written some stuff that you can just jump into a book and write it. And the truth is that like those first few books, you're likely going to just be emulating other people. And like you say, you have to know the rules and the guidelines well enough to then be able to play with them and make that masterpiece of your own.
Yeah.
So yeah, just by looking at genre and trying to shortcut, try it again. By knowing your genre, you can shortcut a lot of the misery that I've experienced myself in writing things that are then like not used or just kind of like struggling along the way. And if that is you're 100% not alone in this, because I do think this is very, very it's just something I see a lot of.
Yeah.
And it's something that if you can really nail down, look into, and be confident in your genre before you start, you will save yourself months of possibly years of heartache and trial and error.
Yeah.
And if you have fallen into that trap, don't feel targeted or attacked by this episode.
Oh God, no.
Like, we all go down that journey, and I'm myself and one of them. Like you, when you wrote your first book, it wasn't intended for a commercial audience, and now you've been like tweaking and doing lots of things to find that genre.
Yeah.
We all do it. I think it's just part of the process. But if you can, in some way, give it some consideration before you begin, you'll help yourself a lot along the way.
Yeah, big time.
Beautiful. Okay, well, we'll round it off there. I need to work out a way to thread these seamlessly into the episode, but if you would like some useful resources for genre and understanding market, you might not want to yet, that's fine. But I'll just quickly plug on the end of this that you can look into programs like Publisher Rocket is a fantastic program that lets you look into what genres are, not only what genres are selling, but if you want to find out, what dark fantasy books there are out there, or, if there's a particular author that you like, that you're like, I like their books, but I don't know what genre they are, you can type them in, look it up. It's a really good tool for researching, specifically Amazon. Yeah. And then there's services like K-Lytics is another one. There's another one that I cannot off the top of my head, but if I remember it, I'll throw it into show notes. And then obviously you can always just go onto storefronts, or you can look in bookstores to see what's selling, how they're categorized. Genre can become a bit of a rabbit hole if you go too deep.
Oh God, yeah.
So I would say focus primarily on a genre and a subgenre if you can.
Yeah, like a main subgenre.
Yeah, without falling into niche. And I know that this could lead to a very like long drawn out conversation, so I'm going to like pull it back before we both get into it.
Okay.
But also, as you're determining your genre, try not to fall into a narrowing of YA, NA, adult, that whole spiel, because that is there, but that's personally, in my opinion, that's not genre. That's the different sort of classification system. We can probably go into that in an episode, because I think there'll be a lot to talk about there. But focus primarily on the genres rather than those sort of classifications for now. Yeah.
And just very, very quickly, while you're in that bookshop and you're looking at the genres and stuff, just
grab a coffee, sit down, speak to Ethel, see what's going on in the crosswords.
But I was just going to say, keep a weather eye on the covers of the genre that you're looking at. And again, won't go into that now. But
some like, been mentioned, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like because you'll see similarities and trends and stuff. There's a reason why traditionally published books every like decade or so, depending on how popular they are, get recovered.
Yes,
because of trends and things. But yeah, it's just worth keeping an eye on for when you get to that stage of like wanting to.
Yes, I think we've got a conversation on book covers coming up soon. But yeah, we'll leave it there for this week. Just a reminder for people that we have a 30-day free trial with Activated Authors available. So if you want to jump onto Zooms with myself and with Sam, get access to our monthly AMAs and expert panels, as well as like all
awesome community.
The awesome community, of course. Absolutely, of course. Then head on over to activatedauthors.com and you can sign up there for 30 days for free with no commitment, cancel whenever. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end of it. So I'll say a massive thank you to you, Sam, and you, the listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate you and the time you choose to spend with us each and every week. And as always, if you're looking to level up your writing and activate your author career, head on over to activatedauthors.com to find out all about our community, our resources, and everything else we've got going on. One more time, we will see you next week.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
Activate your energy.